I'm going to hand sew my first corset. Well, my first garment ever, really. I was fortunate enough to be selected as a pattern tester for this corset coming soon from Lunith Corsetry. It is only in the process of editing this video that I'm realizing that the pattern is labeled as stays and not a corset. So, apologies for that. Here we go. I'm gonna kind of tell you how I did it though. All right, cool. When hand stitching your first ever corset, it's really important to take moments to stop and gloat over how proud you are about the improvement of your straight lines. And really, if you're hand stitching anything, you should take the proper time to gloat. Anyways, here are the other materials I will be using for my corset. Both are thrifted materials I've had in my stash forever. I really want a horse corset. I decided to take a quick trip to the thrift store to hopefully find a cutting mat for fabric, which I did find, but I didn't get a clip of it, but I did get a clip of, these guys. They're definitely planning something. I also made sure to record evidence of this nearly perfect and adorable vintage tin, but I refused to buy it because $4 is just too much, okay? It's too much. Because I'm so committed to the bit of using what I already have, I decided to dissect a heavyweight cotton pillowcase for the interlining fabric of this corset. I also decided that while I was doing this, I would watch Pretty Woman for the first time ever, and I realized that I don't really like this movie and I don't understand the hype. The next step in the process was figuring out where to lay the boning channels and sewing them in, and that was just too much for that night. So that's where I stopped, and that's also where I stopped watching the movie Pretty Woman. Just kidding. The next step is actually cutting out the fashion fabric, or the outer lining of the corset. Stays. Corset, stays, stays. I actually don't really know what differentiates it, and I know that there's a lot of discourse around that, so if you do know, go ahead and leave it in the comments if you want, but don't get mad at me for messing it up, please. I'm sensitive, and I don't like it when people are mad at me. When you pick out the fashion fabric for your stays, yes, I decided that's what I'm going forward with. When you pick out this fashion fabric, make sure that there is just barely enough of it to cause a mild amount of panic when you go to cut out your pattern pieces. If there's one thing I've learned from crafting and sewing, it's that there should always be a mild amount of panic happening at every stage of the process. Make sure you deliberate long and hard on whether or not the stress of having not enough fabric is good enough, feel like a rebel, throw your pattern aside, and then feel bad about it because you actually have put quite a bit of effort into this. Cut out all of your fashion fabric pieces on your pattern and then line them up for no reason. You're going to have to take them off anyways, but it really felt nice to see them all lined up and matching. You're then going to have a little bit of panic. Again, like I said, it's part of the process. Consult your instructions. They're not the enemy. So make sure that the top of your head gets into your frame for much longer than you wanted, and then understand that you messed up. Listen, I've never sewed anything before, much less a corset. I did not realize that my fabric was going to fray like this when I tried to cut the boning channels. So I decided to use this ribbon that I had lying around and hope that it worked. Okay, I sewed in 5 boning channels today. I have to stop to clean my house because it's kind of a disaster, you can see from here. And I decided on using this ribbon for the boning channels, and I know that it's not perfect and it's not working perfectly by any means, but it's working good enough for my first corset, I think. I'll show you now my very ugly boning channels that I've sewn. But you know what? They might be ugly, but it's the first time I've ever done it, and I'm doing it with my own bare hands. So this is what we're working with. Like I said, it's ugly. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not pretty, but I did it, or I'm doing it. See, these are the back pieces, and I'm working, don't mind Reggie's bone, I'm working on these instructions here. I think I probably will have to print off the instructions in color to really know what I'm doing, but I feel like there should be a boning channel here. What do you think, Reggie? Do you want to go outside? Okay, see, this is why I also have to stop here for the day, because I need to clean up the disaster that I've made, and I need to take her outside. It's really important when recording tutorials to make sure that you line up your shots in ways that they provide zero context of what you're doing and how you're doing it, like I did with this clip. The only context of anything that I provide you in this clip is that my hair looks awful. What I was doing in this clip was using math, which is a big deal for me because I hate math, but I wanted to get the boning channel placements and the seam allowance right, so I was marking out all of the places that I would need to stitch in boning. After hand stitching the boning channels for what felt like ages, I had a feeling coming from my cat Cornelius. Something about I needed to see royalty, I needed to see the king, I needed perhaps to put on my blue suede shoes. I knew exactly what he meant and I obliged. I hope you enjoyed the Elvis break. This is what I woke up to the next morning. I had hours of hand stitching the boning channels ahead of me and I was not happy about it. I know rationally that I have no one to blame for all of the hand stitching that I've had to do and that I still have ahead of me. No one to blame but myself and my own stubbornness for my refusal to learn how to use a sewing machine. But that's not going to stop me from still being upset about it and making you watch me hand stitch this in real time so you see just how painfully slow this process was. To distract you from how terrible my hand stitching is, and to add some entertainment value to the next minute or so of video clips, I'm going to use a handful of charming video effects. Enjoy! Okay, this is not having the desired comedic payoff that I thought it would. I'm just gonna speed up the rest of this clip. I did not know that was possible to snap the needle when hand stitching. Cornelius is trying to see what caused that. Fun. Okay. After finally stitching all of the boning in, it was time to attach the 3 layers together, and I got lazy, and remember how I was gloating about my straight stitching earlier? Well, never mind, because I'm gonna have to unstitch that because that's where the grommets need to go in between those 2 channels, but it's not as bad as this side, which I sewed on completely wrong, and we'll have to unstitch all of that stitching you see there, and remove the top 2 layers from the lining and reattach it, so yay. Once you have attached all of your panels together, it's going to be time to make your edges pretty. Use your leftover fabric to make bias tape. I think this is called bias tape. I don't really know. I don't know any of the proper anything with any of this, if that hasn't been obvious. But here's me making it. After finagling around with your corset for way too long, you know what? I said I was going to call them stays, and that's what I was going to stick with, but I keep saying corset. Anyways, just snap, and all of your seams are done. It's pretty, isn't it? I mean, on the outside, not really on the inside. But remember, as Marie Antoinette once said, it's what's on the outside that counts, not the inside. This clip was meant to show that I did embroidery floss around one side of the eyelets and not the other side because I was being lazy and tired of stitching, but I did actually end up doing it to both sides, albeit at a mediocre level. Here is me showing you all of the areas in which this corset is incredibly flawed, but again, it's the first thing I've ever sewn, ever, that I can actually wear. And so, without further ado, here is the moment you've been waiting for. did it. I sewed a corset. Stays. Whatever the heck it's called. It took 40 plus hours, but I did it. By hand, no machines, mistakes and all. I did it, and I am proud of that aspect of it. There are definitely things in this corset that I'm not proud of because I didn't know any better. I don't have the technique. Like I said in the beginning of this video, this is my first ever garment that I have sewed. So mistakes and all, I'm still proud of it. One thing that I'm going to take away from this experience is definitely that I really need to learn how to use a sewing machine because I am not going to do this again. I thank you for watching, and I hope you subscribe and want to see more. Bye-bye!